Of all the battles a man must fight in the modern world, the most intimate, consequential, and profoundly transformative is the one waged not in the boardroom or the gym, but in the quiet, private chambers of his own discipline. It is a battle over a fundamental biological impulse, the release of semen. For centuries, across diverse cultures and philosophical traditions, the practice of semen retention, SR, has been whispered about, codified in ancient texts, and pursued by those seeking a higher state of being. Today, it is experiencing a resurgence, not as a mystical esotericism, but as a tangible, biopsychosocial solution to a pervasive crisis of masculine energy. The path to harnessing this solution, however, is not one of blind dogma or puritanical repression. The true, lasting power of this practice is unlocked only through a dual-key mechanism: deep, holistic education and the daily, moment-to-moment exercise of conscious choice. It is at this intersection that a man can reclaim his vital essence and redirect it from fleeting pleasure toward enduring power. For centuries, men have been misled about their own power. Modern society teaches men to seek release as a measure of success, dominance, and pleasure. Young men grow up thinking that their masculinity is defined by how many times they can satisfy themselves or others. Pornography, pop culture, and casual attitudes towards sex have stripped sacred energy of its meaning and reduced it to entertainment. This ignorance has consequences far deeper than most realize. When a man is unaware of the creative force within his seed, he squanders it carelessly. He feels tired, anxious, and lost, not knowing that the energy he wastes is the very essence that could have been fueling his creativity, focus, and spiritual awareness. Education is the first cure for this ignorance, not the kind found in schools, but inner education, learning the truth of one's biology, psychology, and spirit. A man must understand that semen is not a mere fluid, but a condensed form of life force, a sacred elixir produced by his body through immense effort and refinement. To lose it constantly is to pour out one's potential. To retain it consciously is to refine and multiply one's vitality. When a man knows this truth, he can no longer live blindly. Knowledge opens his eyes to what he is truly losing, and through awareness, he begins the journey toward conscious mastery. Education in semen retention is not about memorizing spiritual slogans. It is about transformation through understanding. True education teaches men to see semen not as something shameful or restrictive, but as a source of creation, power, and consciousness. When men learn that ancient civilizations, from the Taoists of China to the yogis of India, practice semen retention to extend vitality and sharpen mind, they begin to see their own bodies differently. They realize that every act of restraint is not deprivation, but an investment, an act of channeling energy upward instead of letting it flow downward and outward. Scientific understanding also supports this ancient wisdom. Modern research shows that excessive ejaculation depletes zinc, testosterone, and neurotransmitters essential for focus and confidence. Semen retention, on the other hand, helps regulate these chemicals, supporting energy, motivation, and spiritual clarity. But education must go further than science. It must reach the heart and spirit. A man must understand why he practices retention. It is not merely to be stronger or more attractive, but to evolve, to refine his raw desire into devotion, his lust into love, his aggression into purpose. Education, therefore, provides the foundation for conscious choice. Without knowledge, choice is blind. With knowledge, choice becomes sacred. Many men attempt semen retention out of guilt, fear, or shame. They see it as a punishment for past indulgence or a rule they must follow to be spiritual. But this mindset leads to failure because it lacks freedom. True power arises not from suppression, but from conscious choice, the decision to act from awareness rather than impulse. When a man consciously chooses retention, he is not at war with his desires. Instead, he understands them. He knows that desire is energy, raw, powerful, and neutral. When guided by lust, it consumes him. When guided by consciousness, it transforms him. Conscious choice is the moment a man says, "I am no longer ruled by my urges." It is the moment he decides to direct his sexual energy toward higher pursuits, building his craft, refining his body, expanding his mind, and serving others. Each choice to retain becomes a declaration of self-respect. It says, "I'm a master of my body. I will not trade sacred energy for momentary pleasure. I choose growth over gratification." Through consistent conscious choices, the masculine spirit begins to heal. The scattered energy of lust gathers into focused will. The man who once felt drained now feels powerful. The one who was reactive becomes calm. Conscious choice turns semen retention into a daily practice of presence, a meditation on self-control and inner sovereignty. The male crisis of the modern world, addiction, apathy, confusion, lack of purpose, stems largely from a disconnection from sacred education. Men have been educated to chase pleasure, but not to understand themselves. They have been trained to produce, not to create, to consume, not to conserve. When education returns to its rightful place, not as indoctrination, but as illumination, men can reclaim their balance. Education reveals that masculinity is not toxic when disciplined. It is divine when purified. It shows that semen retention is not a punishment, but a path of remembrance, a return to one's original power and peace. Once educated, the man begins to make conscious choices that align with his higher values. He chooses to avoid pornography, not because it is bad, but because he recognizes how it distorts his energy and perception of women. He chooses meditation and exercise not out of obligation, but because he feels the direct connection between his body, mind, and seed. Education opens the eyes. Conscious choice directs the hands. Together, they heal the masculine. Every conscious act of semen retention is a spiritual act. It says to the universe, "I honor the creative power within me." When a man restrains himself not from fear, but from reverence, he aligns his life with divine order. In most spiritual traditions, the seed is seen as sacred fire. It is the spark that gives life to all things. To spill it carelessly is to waste divine energy. To guard it consciously is to participate in creation itself. When men make conscious choices from a place of spiritual understanding, their energy transforms. Retention begins to illuminate the subtle body, awakening intuition and deep peace. The man who was once restless begins to radiate calmness. His eyes shine with focus. His words carry weight. He begins to attract, not chase, because energy once wasted now flows upward, magnetizing his aura. The spiritual man does not practice retention for power alone. He practices to remember who he is. Every drop of energy conserved becomes a step toward union with higher consciousness. His desire for women becomes transmuted into desire for truth. His longing for pleasure becomes longing for purpose. Thus, education without spirituality remains incomplete, and choice without devotion lacks depth. The true union of both brings about the rebirth of man's divine nature. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and get more about our semen retention videos. If the solution to depletion lies in education and conscious choice, then society must cultivate environments that nurture both. We must build a culture of awareness where young men are taught the sacredness of their seed, not through dogma, but through truth. Imagine schools and communities where young boys learn the value of discipline, self-mastery, and sacred sexuality, where fathers teach their sons that manhood is not measured by conquest, but by control, where men openly discuss the power of sexual energy as a creative force, not a secret vice. Education must extend to media and mentorship as well. The current culture glorifies lust, but mocks purity. It celebrates indulgence, but silences restraint. Yet, when men begin to speak boldly about semen retention and its transformative power, they begin to rewrite the narrative. Conscious choice becomes easier in a community that values awareness. When men support one another, when they share wisdom instead of shame, retention evolves from an isolated struggle to a shared awakening. The masculine spirit heals collectively, as each man becomes a living example of conscious mastery. Education and conscious choice together form the alchemy of transformation. Education gives knowledge. Choice applies it. Through this process, Energy once wasted becomes refined, concentrated, and transmuted into higher power. As the man retains, his mind sharpens, his creativity expands, and his emotions stabilize. He begins to sense life more vividly. His presence deepens. He no longer seeks validation because he feels complete from within. This alchemy has been known to mystics, warriors, and sages for ages. They understood that semen retention is not just about holding energy, it is about transforming it. Like fire that purifies gold, retention burns away weakness and reveals inner strength. But without education, this alchemy cannot begin. Without conscious choice, it cannot continue. Both are required, for they balance each other, knowledge guiding will, and will reinforcing knowledge. The modern world poses unique challenges for men practicing semen retention. Never before has temptation been so easily accessible, available through a screen, a scroll, or a thought. The digital age thrives on attention, and sexual energy is one of its most exploited resources. Therefore, education must also adapt. Men must learn digital discipline, how to guard their eyes, control their impulses, and cultivate awareness, even amid constant stimulation. Conscious choice becomes the anchor in this storm. Men must choose what they consume, who they listen to, and how they spend their time. Every moment of attention is an act of energy exchange. To retain semen while wasting attention is to miss the deeper lesson. Retention is not just physical, it is mental, emotional, and spiritual conservation. To walk this path, a man must educate himself daily. Read, reflect, and remember. Choose consciously every morning how to live. When education becomes habit and choice becomes sacred, semen retention ceases to be a challenge. It becomes a natural expression of who he is. The solution to the modern malaise of masculine dissipation does not lie in a pill, a new political ideology, or blaming external circumstances. It lies within, in the reclamation of a man's most fundamental creative power. Semen retention, approached not as a mindless taboo, but through the dual lenses of deep education and relentless conscious choice, offers a path out of the fog. It is a path that demands much. It demands that a man educate himself, looking beyond mainstream narratives to understand the intricate links between his body, his mind, and his spirit. More importantly, it demands that he show up for himself every single day in the privacy of his own mind and choose the harder, more rewarding path of discipline over the easy path of dissipation. This is the essence of true empowerment. It is the journey from being a passive consumer of sensations to an active creator of one's destiny. The retained seed becomes more than a biological substance. It becomes a metaphor for potential itself. Potential that is guarded, nurtured, and deliberately invested into the world through action, creation, and authentic presence. The man who walks this path discovers that the ultimate reward for his discipline is not just the energy he conserves, but the man he becomes in the process. A man of will, of purpose, and of unshakable sovereignty. Please subscribe.